What's up, man? I'm so excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me on, threadguy.
Dude, I'm excited to have you on, man. I have been following your shit pretty closely, I think, for the last couple of months. Honestly, man, no glaze. I'm a fan. I'm genuinely a fan. I think you put out some really good stuff.
I appreciate it, man. I mean, you look at prediction markets been blowing up lately, and it's like there really wasn't a lot of trading content on prediction markets. There was just a ton of content on like how great they are. And I mean, one thing I'll say right now is like you look at crypto lately. I'm not a huge crypto person myself, but crypto seems like it's been tanking this last month. But my prediction market portfolio is doing pretty well,
Okay,
comparatively.
look, this again. I'm a crypto guy, obviously, but I think that the stream and what I want to focus on, I just like markets. So anywhere where
Yeah.
there's asymmetry, people making money in markets, I want to bring them on. I want to talk about it. I want to cover them. Can you start? Give us like an intro, who you are, what you do, and like where did you come from?
Yeah, definitely. So I've traded on prediction markets for about a year now. My original background was I was a CPA for like 5 years, so I was just doing this on the side. I got obsessed with it. What really drew me to it is like originally I played a lot of poker. I was actually into like horse racing and trying to find like advantage with betting on horse races. So uh, when I discovered prediction markets, this was around the last election cycle. It like drew me in. I was completely obsessed. And since discovering them a year ago, like just yeah, I mean I'm always on them, just like researching trades. Just 3 4 weeks ago, I actually quit my job. I got moving boxes back here. I just moved to New York. So now I'm going to be doing trading content full time, just kind of diving in. And I mean, you've seen it like this growth in the prediction market space lately, like it's going parabolic.
Were you profitable as, in horse racing?
I was like semi profitable. It's really hard because in horse racing, the house will take like 17 to 20% of every bet that someone places. So you can imagine, even though it's like peer to peer, you're betting against other people, it's so difficult to find an edge. But that's why I think like prediction markets, once I discovered them, I'm like, why would I waste time on like poker, horse racing, all these other different avenues when you have this platform where there's really no house edge, right? You're not even against a house, it's all
Yeah.
peer to peer. So it just like sucked me in, and I mean, there's so many edges like that you can find on prediction markets that it's just like I love them.
17 to 20% is crazy. That's like egregious. That's like insulting.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like you look at like sports books as well with like the
Yeah,
vig
they're
that
gross.
they'll take on things. Yeah, I mean, so the offering that you get on prediction markets is just so much more consumer friendly, and then if you're trying to be profitable over the long run, it's like you know there's so many more advantages to be found, right? Because it's really not stacked against you.
Okay, so set the stage for me a little bit here, and we'll work backwards. Is you came on and you said crypto looks like shit. I'm up on prediction markets, which is like probably both these things are true. What is your like yearly P and L since you went all in on prediction markets like a year ago?
So, okay, a year ago I was doing this part-time.
Okay.
So I basically had made like 50K on the side, doing this on the weekends. I had a super brutal schedule job. So I mean, I was working like 60 up to 80 hours a week during like
Ugh.
filing times. But since going full time and I document all this live, I've been making about like 2.5 to 3K a week that I think I'm really going to start ramping up as my portfolio grows. I'm going to add some more size in there. Um, so yeah, I mean, it was a fun side hobby for me originally, and I got some extra income. 50K for me on the side was pretty great on top of my regular job, and now, making three K a week and trying to really scale that up, and I think I'll be able to. I mean, we'll see. Um, but yeah, I mean, a lot of big long term like aspirations. I mean, you had Domer on, you had Phantom on. These are like legendary traders, all 7 figure P&L. So that's not me. Like I'm not, and I'm open about that, right? I got a public profile, but I think the appeal there is like there's so many new people getting into space. So I'm kind of just gonna follow along with my like journey of how like going from a small P&L to running it up. I'm very confident I'm gonna hit 100K this year or within the next couple of months.
3K a week is pretty fucking good. You don't have to like defend that. That's pretty impressive. Okay, so tell me this. I think it's like a good place to start. Is I have an audience of traders. We can call them crypto traders. We can call them whatever they want, but they're traders. The people that are familiar with markets, people that like to trade. And I think for most, like every person watching this stream knows what prediction markets are. I think very
Right.
few of them are actually taking risk and opening positions. And I think for most people, there's this feeling of like, yes, it's interesting. Yes, I agree. Pauly, Kalshi, all these things are worth a ton of money. They're going to be huge. But I have no idea what to trade, where to start, how to even approach these things. I get crypto, I get
Yeah.
stocks, I don't get prediction markets. What do you focus on right now? Like, what are you focused on? What type of markets are you trading?
So I'll trade almost any market. I mean, if you follow my content lately, it's been heavily on mention markets because I think
Yes.
they're great for content. And I think as well, like when you think about edges, there's so many edges to be had. So I think for like newcomers in the space, like I'll skip some of the basics of prediction markets, but there's really so many ways to profit. If I were to list some kind of strategies to get people thinking of like real world applications, the number one is what I define as like news trading. So similar to like crypto markets, I'd imagine, prediction markets are live 24/7. And you think about all these markets, right? As new information comes out, someone has to be there to adjust the prices for like new information. So let's think about like a market for will there be an earthquake above 7.0 magnitude, right? As soon as a 7.0 magnitude earthquake happens, apologies to anyone impacted by the earthquake, but whoever's first to, buy all those yes shares on that market and just react to the new information, the news is going to, profit kind of massively at very low risk. So that's one application of it with like news trading, but you can think about yesterday to anyone who follows the elections, right? Vote totals are coming out in batches. So you'll have the first round of votes, but there's still a lot of question. Maybe 20% is reported. Like what's going to happen?
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
a minute later, if it's 30% reported and you can see where things swung, if you're the first to react to that new information, you can profit in a somewhat kind of risk-free manner. And the liquidity is getting pretty deep to where maybe a year ago, this was something you can make a few thousand, but like Domer, Phantom, these people are making seven figures.
How much has the game changed since you started like actually taking positions a year ago?
I mean, I'd say the biggest thing is like liquidity is getting like so much deeper.
Yeah.
You would actually, I think a lot of people would imagine deeper liquidity is going to mean like sharper market participants, but I think it's almost in its easiest phase of like finding edges now than even a year ago. And all the newcomers, it's like there's still a lot of edges, I would say. And with deeper liquidity on these markets, it's like the amounts you can make as well. Like with mentions, doing all these mention streams, like we're seeing mention markets do like 1.5 million on like a Powell speech in a given day. So I guess you would think it would get more difficult lately as like liquidity volumes have increased, but I've kind of seen the opposite, that it's still like so many edges to be found. And then the other thing I'd say that's changing is, there's new market offerings like expanding at like a crazy rate.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
I play mentions, right? These used to just be Trump Powell speeches. Now you have mention markets for an NFL announcer, for all kinds of like different events. You look at culture markets, Taylor Swift, these are things that a year ago would do $10,000 in volume. Now they're doing millions. I mean, the Taylor Swift album release did tens of millions in volumes. So I think the big thing is new market offerings and deeper liquidity, which is just beneficial to all traders.
I know you love that NFL announcer inch market. Okay, I want to ask you about
Yes.
the mention market stuff because it's entertaining. Like I watch your shit on the mention markets. I think I tune into the stream sometimes. I watch your clips. Like I'm aware of your existence and when you're posting these things. I think it's the mention market stuff is very entertaining. Do you actually think these mention markets can be profitable long term and it isn't just full RNG? Like you're definitely like persuading people to trade these things. Like, are there people that are consistently hitting, and do you think that that can continue to like exist?
I mean, I think 100% with mention markets, you can be profitable long term. And I mean, I would personally say mentions are one of like the top markets in terms of just being profitable and finding edges, right? Because the liquidity is not necessarily as deep, so you might not be making $1 million like Domer will do on his political markets, but the edges you could have. So there's another person, I think Esoteric Catboy
Okay.
is his Twitter name,
Okay.
funny name, but he just started a month ago with all the craze on mention markets, turned 1K to 30K. Maybe he's on a hot streak. I don't think so. I think he's just a sharp player because he talks about a lot of his trades. And I'll say personally, right? I've made, 60K. A lot of that's come from mentions, but I have a lot of chats I'm in talking with other mention market sharps, and some of these people have documented like 300K plus P&Ls in the last year, primarily on mention markets.
Whoa.
So, this is over a long period of time.
Okay, so one thing I think is really just like tailing off the mention market stuff that I think is really interesting is like, okay, obviously real world events affect odds on prediction markets, right? Like we know this. Something happens in the real world, odds move. The sort of like the back flip of that, which is prediction market odds potentially influencing real world outcomes, which is kind of dystopian and like fucked, but real and probably gonna happen. And I think like an example of this that maybe sets the foundation for it was the Brian Armstrong Coinbase earnings call the other day, where he's on like, the most important call on his calendar, and he's staring at prediction market odds and what he's gonna say. And it in my head, it probably was pretty harmless. Someone sent it in his company chat, in his Slack. He looks at it, laughs, chuckles a little bit, and then like says the words. But you could extrapolate this out into much more significant, not that, people losing money wasn't significant or making money, but in a much more significant real world impact outcomes. What did you think about the Brian Armstrong market? Did you make or lose money?
The Brian Armstrong one was crazy, and I actually played almost all the earnings calls that day, and I had all my picks the morning of. You can go back to that one. I was so lucky to say I'm not going to play Coinbase earnings because I didn't feel like I had an edge. It's very company specific. So I got lucky to not play it there. I probably would have gotten killed. I play a lot of no shares on words, but that was crazy. And I mean, people in the mention market space, we've been talking about this for like a long time, knowing that this is kind of somewhat inevitable that this might happen sometime, but none of us thought this was going to happen on an earnings call, right? I mean, of all things. And then also on Coinbase, where, they're getting involved in the prediction market space, like you would think they'd want to kind of not get involved in markets. So I think it was very surprising that it came on an earnings call. A lot of people were thinking it could happen on South Park when they did that big episode, which
that would have been a good one for it. That would have been a good one for it.
Yes. Yeah. But I mean, obviously, it's not a great thing when stuff like this happens. And, people have talked about this with elections too, right? Is like, if you look at the election odds, is that going to encourage people? But, I mean, if we look at like this New York City mayoral race, right? Like Mamdani, yeah, he was a heavy favorite now, but back in the primaries, he was a heavy underdog, and he still pulled ahead. So there's so many instances of 1% odds underdogs coming back and winning on these platforms that I think, maybe there's, a little bit where it's going to kind of self-confirm, like confirmation bias with the markets. But, there's enough counterpoints that, I don't think it'll become a big issue.
Okay, so actually, I'll ask you this one first. Do you think that Brian Armstrong going on the earnings call and rattling off every name on the mention market legitimizes prediction markets and like makes them look like a joke? Or do you think it further solidifies their impact in culture?
I mean, I don't want to give you a non-answer and say a mix of both. I mean, what I'll say about it is, like, it's a very viral moment. It's going to be documented in mention market lore for a long time. And I'm sure with some of those clips, it's going to bring in a ton of new users. I think there is a kind of negative aspect to that for sure, which is, all the people that have been talking about this for the longest time and saying mention markets are dumb, whatever, this is their perfect quote tweet moment. So I think it's probably not great for mention markets in the long run, but I think it's something that'll just blow over. I mean, there's no real world that like this was actually, he did this with, I think, a negative intent. So I think it'll blow over.
I love how you call it the mention market space. That's awesome. I think that's awesome. It's like its own developing niche. That is awesome.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have a Discord that I'm in. It's called the Mentions Cave. It's like 8 mentions traders, all 100K plus P&L. We're all talking about like I'm lucky they let me in there because they're way sharper than me. But I mean, going back to your point on like, can you actually profit on this long run? Like, I have absolutely no doubt knowing these people.
That is, I love that. Okay, so obviously, like, you're not gonna like, burn your edges and whatnot. But I'm curious, like, when I asked you about Coinbase, Brian Armstrong, you said the only market I didn't play was Coinbase earnings because I didn't feel like I had an edge. Why do you feel like you have edge in the mentioned markets that you do play?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I did write an article on like profiting on mentions for anyone that's curious. But I would define edges and mention markets really relating to two things. So A, you need to do your research with transcripts. So for every mention market I'm playing, maybe I'll post like a shit post pretending like I'm just taking a word because of some, but in reality, I'm looking at historical transcripts for any earnings call going back to like 2020. For the NFL announcer markets, I'm looking at 100 plus previous NFL games, the word frequencies.
Really? You're reading
Yeah,
transcripts
yeah.
from hundreds of old NFL games.
Yeah, and it's not easy to get that data, like because they don't publish, but you can think about how to find edges, right? So there's one part of it which is like looking at historical frequencies of words, and a lot of people are finding this out. I mean, it's obvious, right? Then there's the second part of this, which is vibes, right? So going back to like real world, news impacting things. If Trump's going to give a speech on Monday, and something happens in the Middle East, the odds of him, maybe if he says the Middle East 50% his previous speeches, now you got to price that higher at like 75, 80%. So it's a mix of the quantitative side, looking at historical word frequencies, and then also vibes and just adjusting to news, new information.
Whoa, so you are reading that. Okay, let me ask you this. Like, are you I don't know who plays tomorrow, but Rams, Eagles play tomorrow. Joe Buck is announcing. You're reading transcripts from Joe Buck games only?
So that's a good point, is like how detailed do you want to go? And there's a lot of levels you can do. I mean, for me personally, I'm not, for the NFL markets, I'm not looking specific to like announcers. Is it a Monday night football game, Thursday night football game? We're starting to, but these NFL announcer markets, they've only been around for a few weeks. So going back to like why I love prediction markets, okay? They launch an NFL announcer market, right?
Uh-huh.
Something like this has never existed before. So nobody knows what the hell the true probabilities are of these words, okay? So whoever is the most like just clever at like you have a day till this market is tomorrow. Nobody knows what the true odds are. Whoever's the most clever to build out their own probability of all these words, is going to profit massively. And then give it more time, these markets become more efficient naturally, right? Because you're getting more and more data. People are researching it more. And I think with the NFL announcer markets, I'm always on Inch No. Yes, it's a little bit of a meme, but yes, I think it's a profitable trade long term. Inch No was
Are you
20
profitable on
cents.
Inch No? Because I feel like that's a fucking brutal one.
I
Are
think I'm
you
like
up on that?
even. I think I'm like even on Inch No, and it's because I got lucky that I wasn't able to play it like every time. So I feel like I'm maybe down or I'm like even, but I'm probably not up.
That's
But it's a great meme.
What's the odds on no generally?
So the first time they launched the market, you could buy Inch No at like 20 cents, which is like a steal. Now it's closer to 35, almost 40 cents since I
Yeah.
post like a grand on it, every time they have a game.
Inches doesn't count. It's different word, right?
Inches counts. So
Oh,
plurals count.
dude, I feel like that's a brutal one. Fourth and inches, third and inches every time. You're
Yeah.
getting cooked on
But
that.
that's the best part, we're talking about edges. It's like you want to have these markets where you look at it and the crowd is going to immediately say like, oh my gosh, just looking at this, I think Inch is going to be said. Like a great example of this is there's a Spotify market. Who's the top Spotify artist this year? Gaten Dugas, another big trader, talks a lot about this. Like naturally, top Spotify artists, I think everyone's going to think Taylor Swift,
Yep.
right? But like you dig a little deeper and it's really probably going to be Bad Bunny. And I mean, the odds kind of reflect that now, but they didn't for a while. So markets like that, where your first reaction is it's got to be this person, if you dig a little deeper, that's another like place you can find a lot of edges.
Rye Fuzzy's in the chat. He says Mandela effect. Threadguy thinks fourth and inches always happens, but it like never happens. Interesting. Yeah. Interesting.
Look,
Fourth and one, fourth and a couple, fourth and less than a yard. Yeah, they get you there. Let me ask you this. I asked this Adoma. How much of your trading is technical? Like I know, like okay, like sports poker even. Everyone has the solvers in poker, right? They have the GTO strategy.
right.
Everyone's using the solvers. There's like it comes down to like a math equation, and a lot of people are like basically put it into math. How
Right.
much of what you're doing on prediction market trading is technical? You have the data, you have the tech, and you're just like listening to the models versus just like balls tingle vibe, going off
Yeah.
your own research in like mental thought process.
Yeah, I would say for me, I'm probably less data heavy. I would call myself like the phrase people use in like the sports betting world, and they also use it in prediction markets, is like, are you a bottoms up person, which are people like you're saying very technical, building up their own models. Probably Domer is in that category. I mean, he
Yeah.
could answer probably better, but Gaten, people like that. And then there's top down people who are, I would define as myself, where I don't tend to be like super deep in the data, but I'm looking at like how other markets are priced in relation to another market. Like something to think about there, right? Is like an example I'd give is like last year, if you're looking at like, will Biden drop out? Will Biden be the Democratic nominee? Like those should be kind of priced the same thing, right? Because if Biden hadn't dropped out of the
Yeah,
race,
yeah, yeah,
then
yeah.
he'd obviously, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so that's where I probably am more top down. And it's because a lot of what I did before making content too was just simple like arbitrage for kind of low risk money every week. If you have two markets that like should be priced kind of the same, but they're not for whatever reason, or you even expand to like multiple exchanges, like there's a lot of opportunity there as well. So yeah, I'm top down, less analytical, but on mentions, I will get, deep in the data.
The transcript thing is awesome. I love that. That is awesome. Okay. Um, you answered my DM in like 30 seconds, and I was like, oh, this kid's a freak. You answered my DM in like literally 30 seconds both times, which was like really impressive. I'm pretty bad at that. And so I know you are like on top of you're just like on top of it. Okay, let me ask you this as a setup. How many, like what percent of open markets, or I don't know, how many markets a week do you think you're trading?
Probably not that many. I would say maybe like, this is going to sound really low, but maybe like 10 to 15. But obviously it depends a little bit. Like we had the New York City election yesterday and the New Jersey election. So there I was in on like for every race, right? All these different markets. And, I was streaming the whole thing live with like a really solid political analyst. He made 20K live on the stream on all those trades. So um, I'm probably on less markets, but I'm usually playing almost every mentioned market if it's got decent like liquidity. Um, and I'm trying to start to like branch out more on different markets, like culture is a big one, and then politics, but it's risky, right? Because you want to trade in markets where you have an edge. So I think for everyone like watching again that wants to get into prediction markets, it's like think about a niche that you're really interested in, that maybe you'll have unique information to where you could price these markets better than like the general public. And crypto markets are a great example. I assume a lot of your audience is crypto. Like maybe there's an angle to like come in on crypto markets and use some of your knowledge there.
So what is you're trading 10 to 15% of markets, which is, no, it doesn't sound low. That's a lot.
Well, 10 to 15 markets in a week, I guess. Not
Oh, okay,
like,
okay. I thought you meant that
yeah,
as
yeah, yeah.
percent. Okay. Still, I don't think that's low. Maybe lower than I thought, but not that low. What is your day-to-day news flow, like time spend look like? Like how much time are you spending researching markets, and like what are you doing?
So right now, honestly, probably like 70, 75% of my time is all content, trying to just like rip content all day. So before, like if I was doing this full-time trading, like my day-to-day would look way, way different. But like now I'm spending a ton of time clipping, editing, and I'm new to all this stuff. Like
Yeah.
I don't have a content background. I was just an accountant. But yeah, I'm like Twitter, all this stuff. I,
Yeah.
I I don't know what's going on. But yeah, I mean, in a given day, like um, I'm staying on top of mentioned markets, and then in terms of news, I'm looking at like White House reporters is a big thing that
Okay.
I'm have all notifications on for them to stay on top of, like Caroline Leavitt speeches, right? Like you want
Uh-huh.
to think about what's going to impact that. I'm following any Truth Social posts from Trump, obviously. I have a few specific X accounts too that I'll follow, but like going back to news trading, it's like just getting good information flow of like honestly Twitter is like really great of like having a few accounts that you
Yeah.
set up notifications for of things that can impact markets. Like there's all these markets on, will there be X tariff on a given day or things like that. Like will there be a ceasefire or whatever? There's like um Trump is frequently going to post a true social post that's going to impact,
Mhm.
tariff markets, all these things. So going back to like being the first to react, like if you set up good information flow, you have good notifications, like
Honestly, cool to hear. You're crushing with the content, by the way. When did you start?
So I've actually been making content for like a year, but again, I was like working full time. So when I say making content, I would like record a 10-minute video. I'd be like, screw this. I'm not going to edit this at all. I would just
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
kind of upload but like maybe 5, 6 weeks ago, I like really started going like balls to
Oh
walls on
my god,
content.
damn, GG, bro.
Um,
5, 6 weeks, that's insane. GG. Do you feel like as this scene gets more competitive, more liquidity flows in, there's more traders, your edge is eroded, and it's gonna be harder for you to make money?
um, I think that's a good point. I mean, if I had to give a simple answer, I'd say yes. I think naturally these markets are going to get more sharp. But what I will say is there's now thousands of markets,
Mhm.
so it's never going to be that every single market has, 100 million in liquidity or volume. So there's always going to be these smaller markets on the edges that are going to naturally be inefficient. And then as they're making new markets as well, like on all these platforms, like going back to the announcer market, like they drop a new market that you have no historical data for. That's just an opportunity to where like if you're quick and you're just smart on how you price it yourself, like there's always going to be opportunity. I'm confident for the next 3 years, even as these things go parabolic, there's going to be tons of edges. You just got to be willing to adapt, change your strategy. I've gone through so many different trading strategies that I kind of primarily focus on, like to where now I'm actually doing analysis on like what words will be said. Before, like I was all arbitrage for like 8 months of just, trading two different markets that are kind of correlated. So as long as you're willing to adapt, you'll always have edges.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think the similar thing happened in crypto too. It's like more people come in, so it's more competitive. But then as more people come in and it gets more competitive, more verticals open, and so there's more things that the sharps aren't paying. Like there's more like inefficiencies in the market because there's more people and more money.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, um, like you're seeing volumes go kind of parabolic, right? But I just think like there's always going to be these inefficiencies. They're always going to be rolling out, new types of markets, and if you just continue to adapt, like you'll always be able to, I think, profit like on these platforms.
Tell me about your Taylor Swift trade and stream. That shit was a
Oh, that
movie.
was like that was one of my favorite all-time streams. So I brought on, for those who aren't familiar, like a Swifty mega fan. So in reality, like this was someone I knew in real life that like has never been on a prediction market, but follows music like die hard, is could tell you exactly how Billboard Hot 100 does their rankings. But he's also just like a huge fan of like Taylor Swift, Sabrina Carpenter. He's at a concert every weekend. So people are always talking about like, oh, can you really profit long run on prediction markets, or how hard is it to find edges? I'm like, let me bring on a mega Taylor Swift fan who's never traded on these platforms. I'm just gonna walk through all the Taylor Swift markets, hear what he has to say, and see how it performs. And I was confident going into this that he would have an edge over the general market. And marketed it as just a Swifty fan. And we went like, I want to say 10 for 12. I think I made 3 grand just
Wow.
tailing everything he gave for Taylor Swift.
What was he wrong on?
He was wrong on these long shots on what words would Taylor Swift say in her song. I think Lover was one. We took it at like 5 to 1. So the only things he lost on were 2 longer shots, but he also hit on like a ton of things that were priced at like 20%. So he hit on a bunch of long shots too.
That stream was a fucking movie. I didn't watch too much other than I just like saw that you were doing it, saw what the setup was, who it was. Did you give him some money for hitting or no?
Yes, and I posted this. I gave him $500,
Okay,
and
fair.
he's now gonna, he said, start trading, but I haven't heard any update. Hopefully he does. But I mean, last night's stream too, I like loved being in person, meeting other people,
That
and
was
like
sick too, by the way. Who was there?
it was me, and then Ben was
Okay.
my co-host. He's
Yeah.
a big political trader, and then Phantom Bets
The
also
goat.
came in. Yeah, and he hit 50K shares live. He made
Live, right?
25 grand, literally, like yeah, just right in front of us. So here I was, going back to why I'm defensive about 60K profit. I'm surrounded by these big traders, but yeah, I mean that was electric, and it's one of the main reasons I'm like so excited to be in New York is like the opportunities to do things in person. You know, I have my room, I have my moving boxes behind me,
Mhm.
but I'm gonna build out some semblance of a studio. Hopefully, have a couch there, be able to have like in-person
Yeah.
guests come. And you think about content and prediction markets, right?
Uh-huh.
It's like the verticals you can go under. Like, yes, I've started with mention market streams, which are kind of fun, like
Mhm, mhm,
viral content,
mhm.
but long term, like there's so many verticals to expand into. And I mean, you think about these political races, it's like someone should be interviewing like a candidate or something like that. You know what I mean? With how big prediction markets are going to get, and you know all the different types of markets, culture, all these things. Like, it's a content gold mine, and that's what I'm trying to kind of go full into.
You're gonna blow up like huge if you didn't already. I'm a fan. Okay, so tell me this as sort of like a wrap is what do you tell people for where they should start that are interested in prediction markets, whether they're experienced traders or not? Like, where do you start? How do you get the lay of the land? And how do you start to think about how you could develop an edge?
So the first thing I would say, anyone starting, is start small, or even just like watch the markets, you know,
Yeah.
because when you trade on prediction markets, to a lot of people, there's going to be new stuff like an order book. Some people might not know how to interact with an order book, especially coming from a sports background. So starting small, that way, if you make mistakes like on interacting with features like that, you're not going to lose your whole bankroll. Number two, I would say, is pick a niche. Ideally, make it something that you really enjoy. So if you love music, focus on culture markets. If you love politics, focus on political markets. You know, if you follow your local politics, like you can follow a mayoral race or something like that, that's going to be a smaller market, maybe less efficient. So picking a niche, starting small are like the two big things. And then just mindset of it is, you know, going back to like inches is, you know, whenever you're entering a trade, my advice would be think about, you know, why I'm entering this trade, like why I think it's mispriced. Maybe ideally assign your own fair value. And then also think about, you know, why is it mispriced, right? So, you know, go the extra step to say, like, what is the general public thinking causing this to be 50% when I think it should be 70%? So just like go a level deeper, don't over, you know, simplify, and always just think in like multiple steps. So if something, I guess another thing is like if something seems too good to be true or too easy on these platforms, like when you see something, it probably is. There's probably a reason it's priced where it is. And always read the contracts, read the resolution rules to make sure you fully understand like all the potential outcomes.
Have you ever traded crypto?
Oh my gosh, I was in crypto back in 2017, and this was when I was like about to go into college. I was 18. I was working at a grocery store in the summer, so I had a little bit of money. And that was like during the ICO craze. I bought Bitcoin. Then I started trading some of the ICOs. I basically round tripped the few grand that I had that summer. But my brother, who got into it with me, he stuck with it, and he's like 100x what he started with. He got into some like crazy. So I actually long term want to get into crypto, and I feel like it'd be funny because you have all these crypto people going into prediction markets, and me being like a Web 2 non crypto guy, it'd be funny to do like a transition to can I make money trading crypto, you know?
We could do some fun crossover shit. You'd be a demon with the fucking Phantom wallet and a Solana address. What?
All
Oh,
right.
Phantom's in the chat telling me to ask you about EA earnings call.
Oh, EA earnings call. That was like a super fun one. So I made a post the other day about you know, bonds on prediction markets, which is like a term you'll hear in the prediction market space a lot. And you know, the thesis is that like everybody wants long shots, you know, and they want 100x. So frequently at a high level, like things that are trading at like 85, 90 cents on prediction markets, um, you know, they're frequently going to be like mispriced. You know, I'm not saying to just buy anything at 90%. Obviously, you need to do your research. But with the EA earnings call, TLDR, EA announced that they were getting acquired, they were being taken private. Because of that, there would be no earnings call, and there was a mention market for what will EA say on their earnings call. So going back to bonds, you know, I bought about, you know, 7 grand on all these words to not be mentioned on their earnings call because it wasn't happening. You know, so I mean, it's like it's crazy the things that will happen on
And
prediction
how much did you
markets.
make?
You know, I made like 2 grand on that, but like virtually
No
like
risk.
risk free. Yeah, I mean, there's a small risk that like the deal could somewhat
Falls
fall through, maybe
through.
5%, maybe 5%, but I'm getting like 30% on every dollar.
That's a sick trade.
Yeah, and I mean, going back to like, can you find edges? I mean, think about that. Like how crazy of like that was an opportunity. And what's insane is that I covered that on stream. It was actually someone on stream brought it up to research it. This was like over a month ago. And even after showing people on stream, like for the next 2, 3 weeks, I was still able to load up on my position. So somehow people like still weren't loading up on it. So it's yeah, it's
That's a
bizarre. I mean,
fucking sick trade. That's gotta be that. I love that trade.
but opportunities like that, I'm not joking, are like everywhere. You just need to like look and research it. And I mean, there was a you know, with the Taylor Swift album release, there were a ton of posts about this with like top traders who had close to like $1 million. I think Domer had a huge position
Dude, he
on
had
this
he
too.
was talking about. He said he had like 50% of his port was in the Taylor Swift shit.
Yeah, and I mean like I had, you know, a good amount on that too. And, you know, to my understanding, it's like that event was pretty much already 100% determined, and you could still get like a free, you know, 5-10% on your money because people were either misunderstanding it or just like didn't, because there was some confusion with how the markets were dated to where like a regular user. But my general point is like the opportunities you can find, and to the point on Domer, right? He got, we were saying $1 million down on something like that.
Yeah.
So there was liquidity. Like it's bizarre.
That is fucking sick, dude. Nice trade on that. What's next for you? Like what's your plan?
So, I mean, I'm building out this studio here. Like the goal is I want to have like a lot of, you know, in-person you know, guests coming on to like interview. So that could be like top traders, but honestly, I want to have like experts on. So, going back to how many markets there are on prediction markets, like thousands, I feel like there's so many people I could find that are just like these niche experts that would be really easy to bring on because maybe they don't have like a big following or anything, but they're like a complete expert in that market. So you can think about like a Powell speech. Like, could I bring on somebody who has attended 50 of these Powell speeches and, you know, asked him questions in the past, and like get his take on like what's happening? Or could I bring on a linguist who studies Trump and his mannerisms to talk about like what Trump will say,
Yeah.
you know? There's just so many angles to where I want to bring on like niche experts, and then obviously long term be great to have like a political candidate on in a race, you know, and ask them, hey, here's where your odds are. What do you say about that? Like, you know.
I'm a fan. I think that's a sick plan. Do you have like a sign off? Anything you want to show? Anything you like think people should do? Should look at? Drop your like YouTube link, your Twitter, like yeah.
Yeah, I mean, follow me on Twitter. I'm doing a road to 100K, documenting all my trades, all my positions, profits publicly. If you're a new user on prediction markets, I think, you know, it's a great thing to follow because, you know, I'm only 60K, but we're gonna run it up, and I mean, I'm fully confident in that. Yeah, and I mean, I'm expanding to like YouTube, all that other stuff, but I mean, like trying to clip things for Twitter already. I'm like, oh my gosh, but I'm gonna get the vertical clips going on Shorts and TikTok soon. Don't worry. Um,
I have faith, bro. Trust me, I see the vision, dude. I think you're sick, man. Keep doing what you're doing. Thanks for coming on. When you hit like 100K or whatever, come back. We'll rip apart too. And I'm looking forward to following, bro.
all right, let's do it. Thank you so much for having me on.
Of course, brother. Have a good one. Peace.